When Joel Schumacher took the reins of the Batman franchise from Tim Burton following the mixed reception to 1992's Batman Returns, the studio gave him two objectives: make Batman kid-friendly again, and sell just a buttload of toys. 1995's Batman Forever was Schumacher's response, followed hotly on its heels by 1997's Batman and Robin. Two films that present a vision of the Dark Knight's world unlike any other seen on the big screen, steeped in the iconography of the 1960s Batman, while at the same time unmistakably a product of the MTV era. So how do you take one of the most crime-ridden locales in all of comics, a city that by the mid-90s had been defined by Burton's duology and Batman the Animated Series for its towering gothic spires and shadowy alleyways, and turn it into a giant neon-soaked playset? And perhaps more interestingly, how do you reconcile the fascist imagery of Art Deco design and Greco-Roman classical art with the most queer-coded, codpiece-clad, rubber-nippled, disco-lit version of the Camp Crusader ever put on film? These movies are so gay. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and this is Joel Schumacher's Gotham City. If you're looking to build up the ultimate Batman graphic novel collection, this video is brought to you by FanHome, the leader in subscription-based collections and models. From 0 year to Batman Year 1000, FanHome's Legends of Batman subscription brings together classic stories by some of the most beloved Batman writers and artists into one epic collection. Each month you'll receive a high-quality hardcover graphic novel featuring iconic Batman stories such as Batman Hush, The Killing Joke, The Dark Knight Returns, and Batman and Son, which, if you want to be introduced to Bruce Wayne's son Damian before he arrives in the movies, now is the time. FanHome very kindly sent me their first installment of their Legends of Batman collection, and I've got to say I'm very impressed. The books themselves are super premium feeling, with lovely full-colour artwork on glossy paper. The first volume in the collection is 0 Year Part 1, retelling Batman's origin in the New 52. It was written by Scott Snyder and features some absolutely stunning artwork by one of my favourite artists, Greg Capullo. And I can really think of no better place to start your Batman collection. So to find out more and get started with the Legends of Batman, use the link in the description of this video and make sure you use the code on screen now to support Panels to Pixels. Thanks very much, now on with the video.
I simply love what you've done with this place. Heavy metal meets house and garden. Ha ha ha.
First named in the pages of Batman issue 4, cover dated December 1940, Gotham City was conceived by Batman co-creators Bill Finger and Bob Kane. By this point, Metropolis had already been established as the fictional setting of Superman's many adventures, and a decision was made by Finger and Kane to give Batman his own sandbox in which to play. Designed to reflect the darker side of urban life, Gotham serves as a counterpoint to the sunny optimism of Metropolis. In fact, it's often said that while Metropolis is New York City by day, Gotham is New York City by night. As the comic book publishing capital of the United States, it's really not that surprising that the Big Apple would become the inspiration behind both superhero stomping grounds, as well as the focal setting of the entire Marvel Universe. But the shadowy look of Gotham in particular was inspired by the architectural illustrations of Hugh Ferris, whose drawings of uplit Art Deco skyscrapers featured in his 1929 book, The Metropolis of Tomorrow. From Gotham's inception, Batman's artists and writers embraced this gloomy aesthetic. Even the name Gotham, while it had been used as a nickname for New York City since the 19th century, it evokes Gothic literature and Gothic architecture. You can almost imagine what this city might look like without ever having to open a comic book. But for those brave enough to venture into the pages of 1940s Batman comics, what awaits is an endless carousel of sketchy harbours and abandoned factories. In this version of Gotham, Batman's caped silhouette trails between rooftops, backlit by a pale yellow moon, which punches through the inky night sky like a fresh bullet hole. It's always a full moon in Gotham City, because it just looks cooler. This was the perfect setting for the Dark Knight's crusade against crime, stories in which the characters' pulpy noir roots were paired with supernatural feats of daring do. Hard-boiled detective meets creature of the night. However, by the mid-1950s and 60s, the so-called Silver Age of comics, there had been a significant shift in the tone of Batman's stories. Where once Gotham City represented the last place you'd want to be alone at night, it now seemed rather tame and toothless. Local crooks and thugs no longer questioned the existence of the Batman in hushed whispers, because they could simply go down to the waterfront and see him and his teenage sidekick water skiing with the latest villain of the week. Those harbours and factories that we talked about made way for zany science labs and art museums as the backdrops for the dynamic duo's outlandish adventures, while Batman's foes laid down their deadly weapons in favour of oversized Rube Goldberg machines that really posed no threat at all to the then world's most underutilised detective. Both Batman and Detective Comics became less and less about Batman being an actual detective, and more about him becoming a Bat baby, or a Bat zebra, or a Bat homosexual. None of this was accidental, of course. Artists and writers of the Silver Age embraced this playful, cartoonish aesthetic, as both a reflection of the era's post-war optimism and in response to the formation of the Comics Code Authority, which pushed to make comics more kid-friendly. Gotham at this time became a kind of colourful urban playground, which resembled New York no more than it did any other major North American city, and this made it ripe for reimagining in the 1966 Batman TV series. Starring Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin, the show embraced the campy sensibilities of Silver Age comics, infusing its Gotham with brightly coloured sets and a distinctly surreal atmosphere. Filmed in sunny California, this version of Gotham was reborn as a glistening West Coast city. It was about as far away from its comic book source material as aesthetically and geographically possible, while still being in the US, of course. And much like West's winking performance as the not-so-Dark Knight, the city became a technicolor celebration of creativity and camp. A place where Batman and Cesar Romero's Joker could have a surfing competition in broad daylight and nobody batted an eye. The city had lost its edge, and, for better or worse, the 1966 TV show would define how the public saw Batman, and by extension Gotham, for decades to come. When Tim Burton brought Batman to the big screen in 1989, it was in some ways a declaration of war against the campy version of the character that had pervaded popular culture since the 60s. Shedding the corny dad vibes of Adam West, Michael Keaton's Batman wore black. He was tortured. This Batman was cool. Though aided by artists such as Neil Adams and Frank Miller, who had successfully brought the darkness back to the Dark Knight in the comics, it was really Burton, along with production designer Anton Furst, who reinvented Gotham City for the modern age. Furst, who won an Oscar for his work on the film, based this version of Gotham on the worst aspects of New York City, crafting a grotesque cityscape in which architectural structures appear to sprout from one another organically, spiralling upwards like black fungus. If crime is a disease, 1989's Gotham was badly infected. This Big Apple was rotten to its core. Burton had described it to Furst as if hell burst through the pavement and grew, and this vision for the city would only evolve further in the film's 1992 sequel, Batman Returns. After the death of Anton Furst, production designer Bo Welch came on board to expand Gotham into a bigger, more oppressive beast. Moving away from the European-inspired organic structures of the first film, Welch imbued Batman Returns with fascist iconography and towering Art Deco architecture, which physically blocked out the light. This would be a world of perpetual night, where even a trip to the circus or local zoo could be deadly. You don't have to be insane to live here, but I don't know why you'd want to otherwise. While Batman '89 was a huge hit for Warner Brothers, I think it's fair to say that Batman Returns received a more mixed response. Critics and hardcore comic book fans praised its dark tone and complex psychosexual exploration of Batman and Catwoman's questionable nighttime pursuits, but McDonald's was reportedly very upset that its latest line of Happy Meal toys was tied to a movie that was traumatizing kids and angering parents. If the Batman movie franchise was going to continue, it would need new leadership and a new/old direction. Enter Joel Schumacher. For 1995's Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher had the unenviable task of taking everything that Tim Burton had established and repacking that into something much more commercial, much more family-friendly. And you know, to the director's credit, that's exactly what he did. Batman Forever feels like an authentic evolution of this universe. There is a visual continuity between the costumes, the Batmobile, the gadgets, and indeed Gotham City itself. But where Burton's world was gothic and oppressive, this Gotham is dazzling and disorientating. The Art Deco Manhattan-inspired foundations remain, but the city is slicker, more opulent, splashed with neon lights and peppered with decadent statues that loom over the city like disapproving gods. In Forever, Schumacher was definitely looking to the past, evoking the groovy 60s Batman that Frank Miller and Tim Burton had so thoroughly dismantled. But it was also sleek and futuristic, catapulting the Caped Crusader towards the new millennium. This retro-futurist vision, which Washington Post critic Destin Howe compared to the 1982 film Blade Runner, was the brainchild of production designer Barbara Ling, who described this version of Gotham as a cross between 1930s Manhattan and the Neo-Tokyo of Akira. But make no mistake, despite the 30s architecture, the 60s colour palette, and the futurist sparkle, Joel Schumacher's Gotham is quintessentially 90s. It's classical art mashed against 90s consumerism, embodying the same spirit as a Levi's jean ad starring Michelangelo's David. There is a sense here that Gotham has been swallowed up by 90s excess. Its core isn't any less rotten than Burton's version, but it has been plastered over with these giant statues and gaudy neon lights. Beneath that shiny exterior, day-glow biker gangs rev the engines of dystopia, owing to the mutant thugs of The Dark Knight Returns. Interestingly, initial concept art for Batman Forever by designers Matt Codd and Sean Hargreaves reveal a Gotham City much closer to that of Tim Burton's films. But crucially, there is a glossy, oily sheen that nods towards what Schumacher and Barbara Ling would ultimately create. Something sweeter, something cleaner, but in its own way, something much more wicked. According to Joel Schumacher, his only note to Ling when production began was to include faces and figures amongst the city's skyline, so as to avoid it being monolithic. If Gotham City was to be a character in its own right, it should have a face. Or like, lots of faces. More is more here, remember? Because that's what this is all about. Excess. Schumacher's Gotham, like his Batman, is big, bold, loud, and proud. Joel Schumacher was by no means the first to acknowledge the bubbling homoeroticism between Batman and Robin. In truth, the subtext of a 30-something bachelor spending his evenings wearing tights and getting into scrapes with his boy wonder companion had been a long-running joke at the Caped Crusader's expense. But by opening Batman Forever with close-up smash cuts of the hero's sculpted ass and wobbling rubber codpiece, I think it's fair to say that Schumacher had created the most overtly gay Batman. The director, who was himself gay, took the hyper-masculine power fantasy of the superhero, with its roots in circus strongmen and Roman gladiators, and amped everything up to 11. Objectifying and iconizing his Batman, anatomically correct rubber suit and all, Schumacher made no attempt to circumvent the camp of comic books. He embraced it. In her 1964 essay, Notes on Camp, which first defined the term in mainstream culture, Susan Sontag asserts that the essence of camp is its love of the unnatural, of artifice and exaggeration. In Schumacher's Gotham, everything is exaggerated. His villains are flamboyant and theatrical. Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy, in particular, with her enormous wigs, arched eyebrows, and pouting performance, is, if I may borrow the nomenclature of the drag community, serving c***. Reflecting on his life in a 2019 interview, just a year before he died of cancer, Joel Schumacher described himself as extremely promiscuous. He talked about living through the AIDS epidemic of the 80s and early 90s, losing too many friends to the disease, and being certain that he himself would soon contract HIV and die. But, as Schumacher explained, this inevitability only made him party harder, take more risks, and sleep with whomever he felt like. And I'm now reminded of this anecdote whenever I see the Gotham of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, a city drowning in its own desire, a Gotham that Barbara Ling once described as a World's Fair on ecstasy. A Gotham partying until the sun comes up, if it ever comes up, while the world around it falls to ruin. A delirious orgy recalling the last days of Rome as the city's inevitable end inches closer and closer into view. Batman Forever was an absolute smash at the box office, becoming the 6th highest grossing film of 1995, and leading Warner Bros. To quickly greenlight a sequel. For 1997's Batman and Robin, Joel Schumacher and Barbara Ling would reunite to create a Gotham City gripped by the icy tendrils of Mr. Freeze and the venomous vines of Poison Ivy. By this 4th film in the franchise, any traces of Tim Burton's DNA that had remained from Batman and Batman Returns had been thoroughly expunged. The production design became even more colourful, even more comedic, and even more conspicuous as a toy commercial. In the director's commentary for the film, Schumacher talks about the enormous pressure from the studio to create designs that could become toys. From vehicles, costumes, and even entire set pieces. And as a result, Gotham no longer felt like a real place with real stakes for its citizens, but instead a giant playset in which Schumacher could clash his action figures together. This, coupled with the film's fast turnaround, a limp script, and some cringe-inducing one-liners, led to a frosty reception from fans and critics. Following the success of Batman Forever, Joel Schumacher had expressed interest in directing a prequel movie, adapting Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Batman Year One. This would have been a much more grounded movie with a serious tone, but Warner Brothers told him, no thanks, just make Batman Forever again. And you know, to be fair to Schumacher, he clearly adores comic books. In interviews at the time and in the DVD commentaries, he constantly refers to both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin not as films, but as comic books. And he was committed to bringing the visual language of comics to the big screen. Schumacher cites the limited palette of the 4-color printing process as influencing the primary colors and neon lights in his films, as well as dutching his camera angles to heighten the drama and mimic the dynamism of comic book panels. But there's no denying that Schumacher had taken a franchise that had launched as a modern revitalization of the Batman mythos, a tortured vigilante caped in black leather, and reduced it to the quality of a kid's cartoon. In fact, given the quality of the Batman cartoon that was airing on TV at the same time, even that might be giving Batman and Robin too much credit. And yet despite all of this, I'd still argue that the Gotham we see in this movie is the most impressive version of the city ever put to film. There's one shot in which the camera tracks up the arm and over the shoulder of one of Schumacher and Ling's gigantic bronze statues before revealing the twinkling city below, and it's just intoxicating. For as big and bombastic as Batman Forever had been, there is a claustrophobic sense to its Gotham. The film uses lots of sound stages for its interiors, and then utilises some very 90s CGI for its establishing shots of the city. But Batman and Robin, for all its flaws, took things outside, with practical models and huge sets to show us more of this world. And though this Gotham may not be as atmospheric as the comic book version, as iconic as Tim Burton's version, or as timeless as that of Batman the Animated Series, Joel Schumacher's city is unmatched in terms of sheer, feverish fun. The vibrant, exaggerated Gotham that Schumacher and Ling created stands as a testament to the versatility of Batman as a character. And that versatility is one of the reasons The Dark Knight has remained so popular for 85 years. In this video, we've talked about one particularly campy and fun version of the Caped Crusader, but to watch me talk about some of my other favourite Batman adaptations, you should click the video on screen now. I'll see you over there.